Welcome to GuidosBros, where we ask better questions.
Because having the answers is just not good enough.
Hey, this is Jeremiah. I'm the brother.
And this is Jason. I'm the other brother.
Yep, we flipped roles today. Why not?
That
Let's
works.
just keep it different. Today we've got an interesting one. We've had a request to talk about some AI stuff, so that's coming your way. But before we do that, I got a couple of questions that I want to ask my brother. One of them's it's low hanging fruit, just for fun, and then one of them's a lot more serious. So I'm going to start with a fun one. If I did not ask my brother this before we got here, so this is going to put him on the spot a tiny bit. But let's just say, for instance, I waved a magic wand, boom, and all of a sudden $1 million fell in your lap. What is the very first thing that you would do?
The very first thing that I would do, well, I'd tell my wife.
Okay, what's the first purchase or spending of the money?
The first way that I would not save the money would be, if it's feasible, to find a home in a place that I like. That way it's where we would want to be and not have to worry about a payment.
Awesome. And then what's the first investment you would make?
The kids. So it would be something that I'd put away for them, whether it's for college or trade school, or if they want to start a business or something like that. So I'd put it away for them. I would invest in that.
Awesome. Cool. Part of the reason I wanted to do that is just because I want the audience to more and more get to know us. And, that's what I was thinking with that question is, how we make money work for us as opposed to us working for money tells a story. It tells, who we are and what we're about. And so, I love that you said the first thing you would do is tell your wife, because that would be absolutely the first. How could I couldn't even make it through the next hour without, I would be like, I'm driving home. I'm telling her in person, this money just fell out of the sky, landed on my lap. This is so cool. And I would just have to share it with her. And that's definitely the coolest part. Anyway. Okay. I told you there was another question. This one's a lot more intense. And this is stemming from a little conversation that came up that I had on social media. There was, I'll just read this to you. They were talking about reproductive freedom in Montana. So for those of you who don't know, I work in North Idaho, but I'm licensed for my profession in Montana, Idaho, and Oregon. And so things that come out in Montana or Oregon or Idaho all have a little intrigue when they hit my purview. And this one, they're talking about reproductive freedom. My guess is that was in light of what happened in Ohio with the abortion stuff and whatnot. But they said reproductive freedom for Montanans will be a major factor in the 2024 Montana Senate race. And this was something that caught my attention because it's being looked at politically, but there has to be a better abortion question than politics. My question for you, putting you on the spot, is if we were going to ask a better question about abortion, what's the better question? Now, I cheated because I have a response, but mine, I took the time to think it out. My brother, on the other hand, I literally just put him on the spot.
Okay, so a better question revolving around the political nature of the topic of abortion, and perhaps a non-political type thing. So I guess as a sciencey person, I tend to look for the source of anything. If an object is in motion, what caused that motion? It was a force. What kind of force? An outside force. And then you look at what that force was and how it originated, and then you move forward to figure out, the ramifications of whatever happened. So if I use the same kind of mentality, going back to the basics, is I would say something to the effect of, is there a better way to get at the source of the topic of abortion? And by that, I mean, where does the abortion topic originate from? And how do we go back one step, back another step, back another step to find out, do we even need to discuss the topic of abortion if we can get at the source of what might be causing us to discuss it in such a volatile way?
Okay, so what's the better question?
It would be, where is the starting point for this discussion? That would be my question. Where is the actual starting point?
Sure. My mind didn't, I didn't necessarily go through the sciencey way per se, but essentially it did similar. I'll tell you where I came to. My question was, how many abortions are there each year? And I said, that's a step closer. And here's the reason why. Because I looked at the data, and I know you didn't have this, and I put you on the spot, but you're saying go toward the origin of the issue, go toward the source, which is what I tried to do in this. Well, first of all, the data we have on it says between 600,000 and 1 million abortions a year, approximately, in the United States. And then I asked the question, why? Why so many abortions in 2023 when we have all the means necessary to stop unwanted pregnancy? Because there's just no way anybody is going to convince me that 600,000, we'll go with the lowest number, 600,000 abortions were all rape, incest, and whatnot. My guess from a social science perspective is those were unwanted pregnancies because of unprepared sex, not necessarily unwanted sex, unprepared sex, like without condoms, without birth control, and all that kind of stuff. So my question is, why in the world do we still have this many unwanted pregnancies every single year? To me, that's more important than the abortion question, because if we could solve that problem, how many abortions would we need? Okay, abortion would be a conversation that's totally unnecessary at that point if we solved that problem. If we got to 10,000 abortions a year, because that was, your rapes, your molestations, your incest, the outliers, right? 10,000, yeah, that still sucks. That's too many. And that's a totally different number in a nation our size. And that's a totally different problem when we look at it that way.
And then a totally different question. So yes, I agree.
Different question.
And yes. So I think we answered it in the same way. We answered it in a different way, but we asked it in a different way, but it's the same basic question.
Yeah.
And yes, it's the source of these. And yeah, it's weird because semantically you could use the phrase unwanted pregnancy, or you could even change that to unwanted children, right? I mean, what's the difference in a way? Like, yeah, that's because bottom line is you don't, I guess, as a non-woman, being pregnant, I don't know if anyone really wants to be pregnant, but they would like to go through the process to have children, right? So anyway, I was just throwing that out there as an interesting thing, because I know that with this topic, a lot of the times the choice of words is what it really comes down to, and that's that's an interesting question in itself, is why do you choose that word? Why do you choose that phrase, right? To reference that, right?
Yeah, the unwanted pregnancy instead of unwanted child.
Right.
Is that
Yeah, exactly. That's
no,
interesting.
that's an interesting question. And from my lens where I sit doing the work that I do, uh I, I've seen people who see it both ways.
Yeah.
And so the gentler way of saying it for people who don't believe it's a child is to say an unwanted pregnancy, which if you follow it down the pathway, leads to a child, right? So is it one and the same? I mean, at some point, yes, 100% it's one and the same. But for some people, there's sensitivity around it. And so calling it, for me, at least calling it an unwanted pregnancy, it softens it for those people who don't see it as a child. Do I agree or disagree with that? I mean, that's a different question altogether.
Right. And so getting to the way that I phrase the question, getting to the source kind of means like, if I don't want to leave this world by falling out of an airplane, I shouldn't skydive. If I don't want to leave this world by drowning, I should avoid going on bodies of water. If I don't want to have a child, I should avoid what? The things necessary required to have a child, right? So to me, it follows it. Okay.
We should avoid in vitro. We should avoid sex.
Well, yes, it avoids the means necessary to have that kid. So for me, it all goes to the source. If you don't want something, don't do the things that cause those things. And to me, as a sciencey person, again, it's a very simple, logical way. Like if I don't want to be on the internet, I should not do YouTube videos or Rumble videos. I should, right? I mean,
right.
Clearly. So am I opening myself up to certain things? Yeah. If I don't want to open myself up, I should shut my mouth and leave. It's that easy. So I don't think it's a difficult question to pose, but I know that it's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah. I mean, and because we get to the emotion of it, and emotion is not always going to match up with everything else. Matter of fact, oftentimes there's an incongruence, an inconsistency between thought and emotion. There's behavior and emotion, behavior and thought. Okay, there's these things that revolve around one another, but they don't always align. Okay, good. Let's get to that was a little interesting intro, but we've got to hit the topic, and we don't have a lot of time today because we got things to do in our real world outside of this. And let's get right after it. Should I put the image you sent me up, or?
Yeah, do it, and I'll intro kind of why we're going to discuss this. So while he's putting that up, we got a question through our website that said, hey, what's going on with AI in the military? Or what are your thoughts around AI in military? And on my brother's other podcast, we'd already done one or two kind of little discussions about AI. And so I thought this was kind of an interesting question because I hadn't really thought about it specifically in the context of military, but since I know a little bit about AI and I know a little bit about military, hey, why not just combine this? So this isn't going to be a full discussion in this particular episode. So we might come back to it one or two more times to sort of wrap it up. It'll give us a chance to maybe read a little bit more about it. But yeah, that's kind of where we're coming from. So we're just going to sort of intro it right now and give you some of our thoughts and initial questions on what we think we might sort of approach in the next couple of weeks. So as you can see, here's the 7 roles of artificial intelligence in learning and development. This is not the end all be all. It's not limited to 7. This is just from the source that we are using right now. And we'll read a little bit more to see, but it's a pretty fair look at what AI does in learning and development. And I chose learning and development because what do we do in the military most of the time?
Training.
training. So we're learning and developing. So AI is involved in that. So here we go. It starts on the top, identifying knowledge gaps. So what does that sound like?
Okay, so this is interesting because one of the things I do, I mean, I'm just speaking from my lens where I sit. I do this all the time. When I meet with people, it sounds ridiculous, but some of the most basic knowledge gaps, it can cause massive issues. It's like I'll sit with somebody and I'll say, so what do you know about emotions? And they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I know a lot about emotions. And then I'll say, okay, I'll walk through a very basic, like fourth grade lesson on emotions. And then at the end, they'll say something like, how come nobody ever taught it like that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a reminder that we go through life thinking we know things because we have a brain filled with information. But when we don't know how to apply it, is that knowledge really any use? So when we can add that, when we can fill in the knowledge gap,
Mm-hmm.
and then put it into an applicable process, then the knowledge has a chance of becoming wisdom. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. And you can't learn what you don't know if you don't know what you don't know. And so that has to be identified in some way. And so that's a logical first step. And this wheel, it goes counterclockwise. So once you learn what you don't know, or learn about what you don't know, then you find the appropriate content to fill in those gaps or make connections in some way. And then the third one, which I think is super interesting, is the creation of digital content. Now, why is it specifically digital content when we're talking about the 7 rules of AI?
Well, because as of right now, my guess is digital content is where AI lives.
It's the language of AI, so it has to create something digitally. So we're kind of stuck in that world, right? Okay. And then it goes into the personalized learning. So that's just sort of the fruit of the gap, the content, and the creation of that content. And now it's tailored to you, right? And then the 24/7 digital tutor, that's because AI is not sleeping. So it's available to you when you need it or when you're going to use it.
It's available to you before you need it.
Or before you need it, right? Because it's in the background saying, hey, this skill needs some extra. This skill's good. This skill needs this connection and whatever. So yes, it's constantly working in the background before you need it so that when you go to it, it's ready.
Let's stay on this one for a second because
sure,
this is a piece that fascinates me, right? The amount of learning that AI can do in the amount of time. Okay, so it increases exponentially. It is constantly learning, which unlike you and me, we go to sleep. AI is still learning. We get up, we eat breakfast, AI is still learning. We drive to work, AI is still learning. We go fishing, AI is still learning. It's constant. And so what is the concept? This is a really weird one, but the concept of time to AI would therefore be totally different. Do you agree? And what does that mean?
Yeah, for AI, but what about for AI's use to us, right? There's a difference between what AI is doing in the background in its own learning versus how it's learning about us and giving us what we need to learn. Because it's on 2 different tracks.
Yeah. But then, okay. So I would probably phrase it differently. What we think we need for learning, it's different than maybe what we need. Sometimes, humans have not been super great over time at picking the right content for the learning. right? We sign up for a class. We're like, oh, this is going to be a great class. We get in there and 3 weeks in, we're like, this is the dumbest class I've ever taken.
Mm-hmm.
But we put ourselves into it. Well, we're going to do the exact same thing with AI, don't you think?
Maybe, because the counter could be that we input what it is that we desire to know or understand, and AI can narrow those bumpers like a bowling alley from 20 lanes to one much better than we can ourselves, because we go in, shopping like we're hungry, and AI says, yeah, but that's not what you said you wanted to learn. So you're off track now. So boop, it refunnels you, right? So maybe it can keep us, more narrowly focused than we would on our own. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Is that a good thing? Like, I'm thinking about being narrowly focused. I like the idea of learning the depth of a particular topic. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine with me. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we lose the breadth, the width, because we're going deep, then what I think of it like, we hear this all the time. Well, not all the time, but routinely enough. We hear these comments about how, we're literally one generation from forgetting everything because we are so specialized in our career options a lot of times, right? So we have people who can make a circuit board, but if all of them die in one generation and it's not adequately handed off, talking about the history of it, then it could literally in 20 years, we could be looking around going, oh my gosh, nobody can make a circuit board. And now computers become obsolete within 40 years because we forgot to pay attention to what's actually happening.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, your question is that what we really need, is to be narrowly focused? And maybe it's not. Maybe, because what do we do really, really well as humans? And that is, we seemingly connect the most random things. And without that spread of knowledge, we don't make those connections, because AI is a non-emotional, non-connective
Right.
being, whereas we do connect. And so we need the ability to see 5 things that are not related and then see how they are related.
Yeah. Okay. So I think about it like a light bulb, because there's a light bulb on the screen up at the top. But I was just thinking, somewhere at some point, we had a guy who said, lightning bolts. I wonder if I could contain a lightning bolt. And they created a light bulb. I mean, it was not as simple as that, but that's essentially where the idea came from. Let's create a light bulb that we can control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lightning bolt we can control, and they called it a light. And would that connection, if AI had existed at that time, would that connection have been drawn by a human or an AI?
Yeah. It's hard to say, because
They're not connected. Like, there was no
no,
connection before that.
they're not. I mean, you're connecting, electricity and lightning with fire, with, chemistry, with physics, and mechanical engineering, and, all this stuff. So yeah, you are having to connect a whole lot. I don't know enough about AI and its ability to do that. And I don't know enough to know if it's something that could happen, or if it'd be something where we would outsource it to AI. It would make those connections, and then we become somehow dumber and not able to connect those things. So again, this goes back to the fear part we talked about in previous podcasts, where we're just like, I don't know. I mean, do we need to be afraid of this or not, kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, moving on, because I know we're short on time here.
Yeah.
Let's go to the part where I think the next one is a piece of our culture that we're sort of losing. And then the last one is something I think AI can't do. So, instant feedback. We are we are an instant culture now. 30 or 40 years ago, we were moving in that direction. We have reached that now. We can get literally anything we want instantly. Part of that, I think, is a very good thing, because for our emotional well-being, understanding, success and failure, just like, as a kid with your parent, you like that affirmation of, hey, did I just do something good or not good? Right? You want to know, because it helps reinforce certain behavior, and it helps curb other maybe negative behavior. And that part's good to a certain degree. But now it comes to the point where it's the adrenaline and the dopamine hits and all this other stuff that we don't necessarily need, because the long term is more beneficial than the short term. So this part it's hit or miss for me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, from my vantage point, it's not hit or miss. It's in small doses, it's good. It's like, a little bit of sugar after an event is actually good. But if you're eating sugar every day leading up to an event, like a run or a swim or
Sure,
then it's not good. Because what you build is the expectation of that bump. The expectation then lowers okay. Let's turn it into
I think I know where
alcohol,
you're going.
right?
I think
Like
yeah.
if you drink a beer, you feel okay. Like it's like, oh wow, that was interesting. But if you drink 5 beers every single night, it takes 10 beers to feel anything from it. And so, you build up this immunity to that instant feedback, and instant feedback then loses its bump.
Plus it reduces the motivation to work harder for the long-term effect.
Yep.
And that, because you can't rebuild an engine in a day. And so if you're looking for instant feedback, I mean, you might only take apart one component in a day, and you look at the engine, it's like, it's still the same. You go out and trim a tree, and your wife's like, did you just cut that tree? I can't tell. You're like, I cut the tree. It's fine, and you're just like, okay, it's going to grow and it's going to be a great shape, but you don't see it for years, but you're doing good. So you don't need that instant feedback necessarily. So yeah, I agree. So
the other thing it's going to do is it's going to make it more valuable for anybody who can see long term, and they're going to end up at the front of the line. When we look at who's going to run the world, it's going to be the people who can see beyond the instant gratification of the instant moment.
Yeah, cool. And then the last thing is develop crucial insights. Crucial is such a funny word to me, because it will develop insights, but those insights have to be interpreted. And so what determines whether it's crucial or not is up to the person actually reading the data. And if we rely on AI to read and interpret the data, it's going to tell us what's crucial or not. And we're not going to know, because we're just going to succumb to the info that is provided to us in 1 or 2 sentences or a paragraph. And we're going to take that as, oh, that's what I learned, or that's where I'm at now. And we will lose the interaction with other people for, you saying, hey, you've come a long way. AI telling me I've come a long way, it doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't connect me to the world that I may enter because of this so-called training that I'm going through. And I'm not knocking it completely. There's insights somewhere in there, but the data could be so convoluted that it means nothing to us in a way that is meaningful, I guess. So I think that's a hilarious one. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because it does connect to something that I recently just released in my other podcast regarding the personal connection. AI cannot do personal connection.
Right.
And personal connection is a need, not a want. And so if people are going to AI to create a sense of personal connection, it will fail them.
Right.
It will, like, it's like believing you're breathing oxygen, but really you're breathing helium. It's going to change everything, and eventually it's going to kill you.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap this up, we didn't hit the military piece, but I assure you we will. And the next, we just wanted to set this up. and we will start targeting what we think, since we didn't grow up in the world of military with AI, and there's a really good chance that the people entering boot camp today are going to enter this world. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have my own initial reaction to it, which we'll get into next time, but we will discuss it and see what questions come up.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us at GuidosBros. You can check out our website. It's coming back online if it's not already there. We are working diligently. It's a new adventure, so there's always little hiccups that you got to overcome. Failure is just part of the process, and we're going to do our growth. And we appreciate you sticking with us through it. And we hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and follow.
You can go to GuidosBros.com. That's GuidosBros.com for additional content.